Good afternoon. My name is Rod McMillian, and I'm chair of the Audit Committee. I now call to order the September 20th, 2022 meeting of the Audit Committee of the Board of Education of Baltimore County. In accordance with Board Policy 8311, the chair of the committee, at the discretion and after consultation with the staff liaison, may convene an in-person committee meeting. Otherwise, all committee meetings will be held electronically. Today's Audit Committee meeting is being held virtually and broadcast through Microsoft Teams. In order to conduct this meeting efficiently, all voting items this afternoon will be done by roll call vote. Board members will say their names before making and seconding a motion as applicable, as well as when requesting discussion on an agenda item. As a courtesy to the committee, I ask that you inform Ms. Jamison or Ms. Barr if you must leave the call by using the team chat feature so that a quorum can be maintained. Ms. Jamison, please call the roll to determine the presence of a quorum of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. McMillian. I will start with Ms. Stilusky.
Here.
Ms. Joes.
Here.
Ms. Hassan. Mr. McMillian.
Present.
Thank you.
A quorum being present, we will begin. Ms. Jamison, please call the roll of staff members participating in today's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. McMillian. I will start with Ms. Barr.
Present.
Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Ms. Manna.
Present.
Mr. Fletcher.
Present.
Mr. Straight. Ms. Sample.
Here.
Ms. Crew.
Present.
Mr. Edwards. Mr. Hartlove.
Here.
Are there any other attendees present that I did not recognize? Hearing no additional names, I turn the meeting back to you, Mr. McMillian.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. The live video footage of our last meeting represents the minutes of the meeting. The minutes stand approved as recorded. Item number 3, reports. Ms. Barr, please proceed with the overview of the Altus Office of Internal Audit.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the new committee members and returning committee members. We appreciate the opportunity to give you the overview of our Office of Internal Audit. Next slide, please. So what is internal audit? We now follow Red Book, which are rules designed specifically for internal audit departments. And we use this definition to define our role within the organization. Our function through the completion of audits, reviews, and investigations is to provide objective information and evidence to all levels of leadership for their consideration in decision-making processes related to the improvement and effectiveness of risk management, internal controls, and governance processes. Next slide, please. So in accordance with Red Book, it's important to have our office's authority established. It's customary for internal audit shops to have the authority established through policies and charters. In BCPS, we have Board Policy 8400 that gives us the authority to have access to any individuals or people or documentation that we would need to complete our work. And that, along with our charter and work plan, further identifies our role and responsibilities. In addition to Policy 8400, we have connected policies 8410, which discusses the employee's responsibility related to fraud reporting. And then we have 8420 as well, which is our anti-retaliation policy for those that cooperate in any type of investigation conducted by our office. And then we also have the Audit Committee Charter, which was approved in April of 21, that defines the roles and responsibility of the Audit Committee. And as I previously mentioned, we have the Office of Internal Audit Charter that identifies our roles, responsibilities, professionalism, reporting structure, things of that nature. Next slide, please. Our general scope of work is basically to determine whether the school system's internal controls and governance processes, as designed by management are adequate and functioning in a manner to ensure that risks are identified and addressed, that financial, managerial, and operational data is accurate, reliable, and timely, that compliance with policy, standards, procedures, applicable laws, and regulations is achieved, that resources are acquired economically, used effectively, and adequately protected, that BCPS programs, plans, and objectives are achieved, that quality and continuous improvement are fostered in the school system's control processes, and that legislative or regulatory issues affecting the school system are recognized and addressed properly. Next slide, please. We've designed our internal audit work plan to address what we consider to be risk areas while limiting the scope of work to what we can realistically accomplish with the available resource hours. So during this fiscal year, we will accomplish several audit activities. The completion of investigations of fraud, waste, and abuse. And at this time, I would like to have Mr. Fletcher explain what we do with respect to when an allegation comes into our office related to fraud, waste, and abuse. Mr. Fletcher?
Thank you, Ms. Barr. And so keep in mind, allegations of fraud, waste, or abuse, or allegations in general, can come into our office through several different vehicles, if you will. Of course, the primary being the Ethics Point Fraud, Waste, and Abuse hotline. However, it can be phone call, something that comes in through the mail, anything like that. And once that information is received by our office, we'll go through a triage process, if you will. And what that allows us to do is review the content of what's actually in that allegation. And depending on how we received it, if it's something, sometimes we will need to reach back out to a reporter in an attempt to obtain additional information to determine whether or not it's something that we would want to investigate or provide to management. We can certainly do that through the hotline. However, it's not always guaranteed that the reporter would reach back out to us if we do leave those questions out there for that person. However, so once we go through and do that, we then evaluate the actual content of the allegation, determine whether it is essentially categorized as fraud, waste, or abuse. And if that is the case, that is something that our office would then keep and investigate. We'll talk about the reporting process later through the slide deck. Or it could not necessarily reach those levels, but it may be something that we would still like to provide to management and receive their response, have them take a look into it and then provide a response back to us. So we could certainly do that as well. And then, of course, the third option is when we receive the allegations that come in, and it's not fraud, waste, or abuse. They're typically management issues, things like that. Those are items that we would provide to management and simply wouldn't require a response back from them. But we do document the fact that we receive it and then provide it to management for their review and disposition. And so any of the investigations that come in, we'll go through that triage process. And then the goal then is to determine which ones we're going to keep internally and investigate within our office, and then which ones are more appropriate for management to handle on their or through their normal course of duty. And Ms. Barr, I turn that back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. In addition to the completion of our investigations, we will continue to review and update the FY22 risk assessment as we complete risk-based audits during this current year, FY23. And I'd now like to call on Ms. Manna to please explain the risk assessment process that we used over the last year to come up with this current year work plan. Ms. Manna?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Barr. To complete the risk assessment last year, we held over 60 meetings with more than 100 personnel to discuss department office objectives, potential risks in their areas, and to determine key business process functions. And through this process and these discussions that we had with management, we identified 458 key business functions within all of BCPS divisions. Then with the help of management, we rated each of these functions as either high, medium, or low, using a risk factor and criteria scorecard that we provided to them. And we developed a risk level for each of those key processes. We then use those results for the risk assessment and use that for the basis for selecting projects that we selected in our current work plan. And our goal is to continue to refine our risk assessment process by reassessing these functions that we have already identified and their risk ratings. And we plan to do this by communicating back with all process owners annually and to determine if there are any changes, such as reevaluating the current risk rating of those processes or identifying and determining if there's any new processes and then ranking those as well. That is it at this time. We can explain some of the risk ratings and get into that a little bit more detail after Ms. Barr finishes the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Manna. In addition to continuing to update our risk assessment, we'll be doing carryover projects that need to be completed in this current year. In this year, there were 3 carryover projects. We had the summer payroll audit, we had the IT security audit, and the records management audit, in addition to 13 investigations that were carried over into this year. We also complete follow-ups for every audit that has findings. And for this year, we have 2 follow-ups that we have to complete. One is related to a school audit that we did, and the other is related to an overtime payment audit that we did. As Ms. Manna mentioned, we'll be working on risk-based audits this year, completed in accordance with our risk assessment results. This year, the plan is to complete 11 high risk, 6 medium risk, and 3 low risk audits. Also, we accept and work on special requests and unplanned activities that can come as a result of requests from the board, the superintendent and the staff, principals, office heads, or also emerging risks that require immediate attention. In addition to the audit activities, direct audit activities, we complete some indirect activities, and we call those general office responsibilities. One of the biggest general office responsibilities that we will be doing this year is the implementation of a new cloud-based software application that will house all of our work papers and our reports. And for that, I'd like to call on Ms. Stevens to provide an overview of the product called Teammate Plus. Ms. Stevens?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. So as a result of the cyber attack in 2020, it was recommended that we move our audit management software to a hosted online vendor. At that time, the management system we were using did not have that option, so we started researching. There were many options out there. We narrowed it down to 4 vendors. We did contact those vendors. We had them do some live demos for us and provide pricing. Staff all participated, and we considered the cost and functionality of each system, and we chose a vendor called Wolters Kluwer, and their product was called Teammate Plus. We went through the software evaluation vetting through the Department of IT and received approval for the purchase of this software. Did a lot of training with it in the last fiscal year and had it up and running for July 1, which was our goal. So it is a total audit management system. It's wonderful. It handles all of our processes from documenting our risk assessment right through to issue tracking at the end of our audits. So we started off, we took the risk assessment that was completed by Ms. Manna and her team. We input that into the system. It spits out all of our ratings, and we can then select the processes that we want to audit. We add our projects and we assign our staff, and our staff starts working. So one of the really nice features of this software is things are done through in-app notifications. So as soon as an auditor has finished a section of an audit, they can send it for review and the reviewer can review it immediately. In the past, basically, our audits would be completed completely before anybody would go in and review them, which could cause some problems and cause things for not to be quite as efficient. So this new in-app notification really makes us a little bit more efficient, a little bit more effective, keeps things being reviewed as soon as they're being completed. It's also cutting down on emails because we used to email each other when those things needed to be reviewed. So we can also communicate directly from our software with our auditees. We can request documents through a secure portal. They can send us information. We can send them information about the any type of findings that we have. We can request management action plans back from them, and it really just cuts down on a lot of back and forth, with the auditees. Our reports can now be configured to pull information right out of the application, so that we're not cutting and pasting a bunch of information into our reports. So it makes everything a lot more accurate. We also have dashboards available to us that indicate which stage each audit is in, how many procedures have been completed and approved, how many are outstanding. So it really is going to help with our, managing our projects and getting them completed in a more timely manner. The really big feature for Teammate was that it had built-in analytics. Prior to having this software, we used a product called Idea. It's a very powerful tool, but it's also a very user intense tool. It takes a lot of training to use it. So we had a few people in the office that were pretty skilled at it, but not everyone. So with this new software, we have it's called Teammate Analytics, and it comes with multiple pre-programmed analytic routines that really make it easy for any auditor to come in and run these routines and use analytics on a more regular basis. And we're trying to do that on every audit now, because it allows us to look at more data so that we're not necessarily sampling all the time. We can actually look at whole populations of data versus just doing some sampling. So been really happy with it so far. Have a few little hiccups with it, but I think it's a really powerful system, and I think we're really lucky to have it. So, Ms. Barr?
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. So could you advance to the next slide, please, Mr. Corns? Thank you. So once we get all of our work done, the investigations, the audits and reviews, we do send out reports, and we do communicate regularly and routinely with a variety of stakeholders. So on a monthly basis, we do present to the audit committee. I do meet regularly and monthly with the superintendent, with general counsel, with the chief human resource officer, with the chief financial officer, and new this year, been invited to attend the superintendent cabinet meetings on a quarterly basis. We also do, upon request, meetings by the Board of Education, various external agencies, and we do presentations for school system employees. Our reports, we do provide the work plan updates, and status updates are routinely provided to the board, the audit committee, and the superintendent at various levels throughout the fiscal year, and it's primarily on a quarter basis. So pretty soon we'll have our Q1 report coming out, and then in January would be our mid-year, and then April would be our third quarter, and then July is usually our year-end update that identifies all of our accomplishments. Audit reports are sent obviously to the auditee with whom we interact. Their most direct and immediate supervisors. They're all copied to the superintendent and other appropriate recipients. All of our audit reports are posted on the Office of Internal Audit website, and they provide operational management with findings and recommendations. Our fraud examination reports have a little bit of a different distribution. They are sent to the superintendent, general counsel, and chief human resource officer. And once all level of employee appeals have been exhausted and I get the okay from the Department of Human Resources and the Office of Law, I will then send them to each individual board member. And we also send them and work with the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office as warranted if there is any criminal activity indicated. Next slide, please. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody. We would like to extend our gratitude and appreciation to the board, its audit committee, the superintendent and his cabinet, and members of BCPS management and staff for providing us with cooperation and input into the development of our risk-based audit plan and for supporting the general mission of the office throughout the year. So we know we can't do it without everybody's assistance and cooperation and input. And Mr. McMillian, that concludes our presentation, and we're ready to entertain any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barr and her staff. Committee members, any questions for Ms. Barr? I see Ms. Felicia shaking her head no. Rowan, do you have any questions? No?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Joes, any questions?
No questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, we move to announcements. The next meeting of the Audit Committee will be on Tuesday, October 18th, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. Administrative function. I will now entertain a motion to convene an administrative function session. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved, Hassan.
Second,
Take it.
Stileski.
Outstanding, thank you. It has been properly moved and seconded that we will convene an administrative function session to discuss committee operations. Ms. Jameson, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Stileski,
Yes.
Ms. Joes,
Yes.
Ms. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. McMillian,
Yes.
4 favor.
Thank you very much. And remember, October 18th is our next meeting at 4:30. Thank you.